Hey, quick content warning. There's a fair amount of sex and nudity in this video. It's censored and everything, but maybe don't watch this with your parents. Also, I have a coffee now in addition to my Patreon. You can give me a tip for as little as $1 there, if you prefer. I don't even think they take a cut, if it makes you feel better. Explicit content meant to be sexually gratifying is not allowed on YouTube. Posting pornography may result in content removal or channel termination. Videos containing fetish content will be removed or age restricted. We may allow sexual content when the primary purpose is educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic, and it isn't gratuitous. For example, a documentary on breast cancer that shows nude breasts would be appropriate, but posting clips out of context to sexually gratify from the same documentary is not. The same applies to depictions of sex scenes in artistic content. For example, a film with a sex scene may be allowed if it included details such as the name of the film, director, actors in the video content, and in the video description. Remember that giving context in the content, title, and description will help us and your viewers determine the primary purpose of the video. Now, I'd like to give you some context. Breast Screening, Help for People with Disabilities, is a 6-part documentary produced by the Leicestershire Partnership NHS Trust, a UK hospital network. In part 5 of the series, a representative explains what a mammogram is, why you would want to get one, and what the process involves. The footage cuts to video of a woman receiving a mammogram. She's topless here. This video is not age-restricted, according to YouTube's own guidelines, which I believe I've followed as well by giving context. This is not a pornographic image, and I would agree. There is nothing inherently sexual about a woman's breasts. In many cultures, women walk around freely without covering them, and no one considers that lewd. Now, let's change the scene a bit. Let's say that during the filming process, a man unaffiliated with the hospital found his way into the room. You can just see him in the corner, peeking through the doorway, staring. What does he want? What do you assume about him? Naturally, you assume he's a pervert and getting a sexual thrill out of what would otherwise be a clinical image. But that got left in the film accidentally. Nobody noticed that, right? So, does that break YouTube's guidelines? Is the footage pornographic now? What if they knew? Let's erase the man from the scene. Do we even need him to make this perverse? If you removed the cameras, this moment is a woman getting a mammogram. But with your eyes on her, it can take on any number of meanings. Perhaps when I first showed her, you didn't find anything sexual about it. But now that we've surrounded the frame with sexual thoughts, can you look at it the same way? How do you know that you aren't the only voyeur?
Shocking, are you?
Trilobite Entertainment came out swinging in 1993 with The Seventh Guest, a critically acclaimed point-and-click puzzler with revolutionary FMV graphics.
It's all right, son. You're okay. Don't worry. It's just an illusion.
The designers at Trilobite were motivated by the emerging CD-ROM technology and its massive storage capacity compared to floppies, so the cutscenes in that now iconic actor on green screen style were a showcase of what was possible. Nowadays, The Seventh Guest is considered a charming, if dated, romp in the early 90s FMV craze. Its sequel, The 11th Hour, was also well received, and after a few more projects at the company, two of the driving creative forces decided to split off and form their own studio, Aftermath Media. Rob Landeros, Trilobite's art director and producer, and David Wheeler, who directed the film segments. Together, they wanted to push the envelope in a way no one yet dared. They were determined to make a game that transcended the definition of the word, and in 1998, Aftermath released Tender Loving Care, featuring John Hurt. TLC was met with positive, if not middling, reviews, and in recent years has been absolutely torn to shreds. People hate this game, dude. I'm not here to argue that it's not that bad. I'm here to tell you it's actually cool as fuck. TLC opens with an introduction by John Hurt's character, Dr. Turner, pulling up to a house. He makes some mysterious allusions as to what happened here, and it can't be anything good.
Nobody's buying. Not after what happened here.
Flashback to a man bringing a woman breakfast in bed.
Breakfast time.
Did you get Jody's breakfast?
You can guess that they're husband and wife, and they keep talking about someone named Jody.
It's a sweater for Jody.
Thought so. It's her favorite color.
Yes, it is.
There's something off about the two of them, though. The woman seems detached, and the man clearly has something on his mind. The woman's name is Allison, and her husband, Michael, is suggesting that they get a nurse for Jody. Clearly something has happened, and maybe you can start piecing things together. While Allison is resistant to the idea, Michael reveals that the nurse is arriving that day.
Today?
Yes, her name is Mrs. Randolph.
This is weird. On one hand, it's rude and domineering for him to do this without talking to his wife, but on the other, you can't help but wonder if there's a reason for that. Something is definitely going on, and one of them is hesitant to say it. Next is a really interesting shot that I want you to remember for later. It's only a few seconds, but Michael is at his computer in his office. The camera then zooms out to the same view, but much further away. There's something uncomfortable about it. It's so far from the subject that it feels like we're in the scene watching him. Like, the only explanation for this choice is that it's some kind of POV shot. The new nurse arrives. Catherine Randolph.
Says it's a $50 fare from the airport.
Lady, it's 25 miles. $2 a mile.
Mrs. Randolph?
Yes. Am I being overcharged?
She comes off as cold and rude, and Michael ends up paying for it.
She's some piece of work.
I wouldn't tip him. He doesn't deserve it.
It's not a flattering introduction to Catherine, but Michael might take the cake for bad impressions.
Something wrong, Mr. Overton?
You're not quite what I expected.
What did you expect?
You're very young.
I'm qualified for the job.
I just expected someone with more experience. I was expecting an older person, maybe a semi-retired widow or something.
If in your opinion I'm unsuitable, then I'll leave.
No, I don't.
On the other hand, if I don't fit your image of a Mrs. Randolph, then why don't you just call me Catherine and let's get on with it?
It's a little subtle, but I think on the way up the stairs he's checking her out.
I'm looking forward to meeting your wife,
She thinks you're here to take care of our daughter.
Jody.
Yes. Jody. You know the situation?
Of course.
All right, if it wasn't obvious yet, Jody was Michael and Allison's daughter who died some time ago, and Allison is not taking it well.
Did you get Jody's breakfast?
Catherine says she's going to start changing. Michael very blatantly looks at her chest, and she speaks in this whispery, seductive tone all the time.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to get started.
After this, John Hurt steps back into frame and makes some observations about what just happened. Then, he asks the viewer to answer some questions about their thoughts.
A few simple questions.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how important is good sex to a marriage's success?
Oh, okay. Right off the bat, huh? They actually got John Hurt to narrate all these questions, and he shows up multiple times throughout the story and after every major cutscene. He does a good job, too. It's not phoned in, per se. Tender loving care is shot like a TV movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Other FMV games of the time were much more primitive. You were lucky if you got more than bad actors on green screens reading crummy scripts.
Cop KO's Panhead, first round. How's your face, asshole?
Here, there's actual cinematography, the dialogue is pretty competent, and the acting, in my opinion, is decent. I don't want to make it sound pathetic like I'm giving it props for doing the bare minimum. I'm just saying, it's a lot easier for me to start digging into a story if it's able to clear some basic hurdles. You'll be asked questions about your values and behaviors, as well as things pertaining to the scene you just watched. For instance, you get 2 back-to-back questions about your thoughts on Catherine and Michael. After these Q&A sections, you're dropped into what I'd call the main gameplay of TLC. You have free reign to travel the house and investigate various points of interest. For example, we start out in the master bedroom, where Allison keeps her journal. It's all capitalized and lacks any sense of punctuation. The emotions are powerful, and sentences bleed together in a train of thought that reveals how manic and unstable her world is. She writes about Jody as if she's actively taking care of her. It's creepy. The last page reads, "I can't help feeling this horrible feeling, this terrible feeling that something isn't right, that something is lurking outside, like a prowler, that scary feeling you get when you think that something is under the bed or in the closet, something bad is going to happen." On Michael's side of the bed, you can listen to the phone and see what he's been dialing.
Hi, I'm Randy Vixen. Welcome to 1-900 Hot Licks. You have chosen fantasy number 17.
Did I?
Naughty Nurse Nellie.
Okay.
Hello there.
Right.
I'm the night nurse. My name is Nurse Nellie Naughton. You can
Hi.
just call me Nellie.
Hi, Nellie.
And my full breasts are just aching to get out of this oh-so-tight uniform. Do you like what you see?
I mean,
Good.
okay.
I thought you would. Now, it's
Okay.
time for your sponge bath. Why don't you sit up? That's good.
Okay.
Look at those shoulders. You must work out.
I really don't. No, it's fine.
Oh, that's some scar.
I don't have
I
any
like a
scar.
man with
I don't have
scars.
any.
Now,
I'm a soft guy,
just
little guy.
like Looks like I've got more and more to clean every minute. Does that feel good? Oh, yes.
I didn't know my insurance covered
Yes, it
this.
feels
No, it's fine.
Oops, I dropped the sponge. I guess I'll just have to use my hand.
No, you don't.
Hold on while I put on a rubber glove.
No, you
Do
really,
like
no,
that?
you really don't have it.
Of course you do. Oh,
no,
You're my most favorite patient. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Okay. There's a lot to learn around the house, but I want to focus on how it relates to what just happened. In Catherine's room, you can read her personal diary, where she explains that the cab driver from before was being a total creep and harassing her on the ride over. She was as surprised by Michael as he was by her. She observes that he's been forced into the role of caretaker for his wife, and she enjoyed the way he looked at her. Before she can lead him on, she decides it's better not to. In Michael's study, you get the opportunity to read his own journal. He and Allison haven't had sex since the accident, which we learn later was 6 months ago. That's a long time. He's a mess of emotions. Anger, helplessness, fear, and desire. He's a prisoner in his own home. His only escape is memories of the past. This is all important because it dramatically changes what just happened. So Michael and Catherine don't have a great first impression, right? Catherine is cold and snippy, and Michael is not hiding it well, if you know what I mean. Everything changes with this context, with just the information from a single exploration section. Already, Catherine's behavior is a lot more sympathetic, even likable. She has a cat named Tigger.
I'll be working on that case I was telling you about, the Overtons. Remember? Oh, it's okay, Tigger. Shh.
That's adorable. Allison is outwardly unwell, but Michael isn't holding up much better. Compare this to the relatively well put together way he acts, and you see that all of this is a facade. He's crumbling inside, but he can't show it. Catherine is right. He's reeling from the death of his daughter, but instead of support, he's been thrust into another parental role, this time for his wife. Now, with that in mind, is it any wonder that Michael fantasizes about nurses? This fetishized idea of a nurse is everything he needs from his wife that he's not getting. He wants a woman who, for once, is going to take care of him, who will relieve him of his burdens and soothe his sexual needs. So when he sees Catherine and realizes that fantasy is now going to be living across the hall, he's not prepared. All his weirdness is him trying to process what this means, and you can tell this isn't what he wanted because he is surprised. He was expecting some old maid to show up that he'd have no attraction to. Now, things are a little more complicated. Mind you, all this information is stuff that we know. The other characters don't. So when Michael and Catherine interact in the future, they are working off their own understandings of who the other is, which is completely different from what the audience's understanding is. Most games take the idea of an interactive medium and try to insert the player into the story. Tender Loving Care is the first game I've ever seen that extracts you from the story as an active participant, but keeps your role as an observer. During exploration, you'll occasionally run into the characters, and they'll tell you what's on their mind.
You're the, viewer, right?
Catherine refers to you directly as the viewer, and these moments feel more like someone talking to themselves rather than a real character in the plot.
Michael tries hard, he really does, but he doesn't understand. I mean, he's Jodie's father, and he's a very good father, but it's different being a mother.
It's a unique halfway point between the audience and the actors. You end the exploration sections by going to a specific marked area and inspecting a certain object. Here, you're given a second series of questions in what's known as a thematic apperception test. A TAT, as it's sometimes known, is kind of like a Rorschach test, but instead of explaining what you see, you tell a story based on the image. For instance, the famous painting Nighthawks. They ask you why the man is eating alone, and you have a number of explanations. Maybe he's working late. Maybe he's with someone who's in the bathroom. Maybe he's suicidal. This is a game, so you're limited to what the developers can provide for answers, but there are a wide variety of possible choices that get randomized during your playthrough. I want to point out that TATs have come under a lot of scrutiny since their development in the 1930s. To their credit, the designers did work with the staff of an actual university psychology department, but this was in the 90s, and they've never spoken about how much of the psychology was meant to be accurate and how much is just neat concepts that they thought had a lot of potential for a story. This is the basic structure of the game. Watch a scene, answer some questions, explore the house, take a test. Over the course of the game, your choices will build up a psychological profile that's available anytime you're not in a cutscene.
Allison. Allie, the nurse is here.
Did you say something, Michael?
Michael is here to introduce Allison to Catherine, and when she comes in, it's...
Hello, Allison.
Allison, this is the nurse.
Catherine is immediately this angelic, powerful figure in her white gown. Just the sight of her fills Michael with nervousness. He stands up like he's trying to feel taller than them. He gestures to a chair off screen, but she sits down next to his wife instead, taking his place. Then he attempts to commandeer the conversation, but Catherine isn't having it.
So, have you spent much time in the country before?
No, not really.
Well, you're in for quite an experience. And at first you're gonna miss all the noise and the hubbub, but...
It's a lovely place, but I'm not here for a vacation, Mr. Overton.
I understand that.
I know exactly how you feel. When I was a little girl, we had to have a nurse live in our house to take care of my mother who'd suffered a stroke. How horrible. That's what made me decide to become a nurse. I saw the tremendous good you can do for other people if they'll let you.
On the opposite end, Allison has no trouble taking to her. Catherine asks Michael to leave the room, which he clearly wasn't expecting. I don't want to film school 101 here, but I think it's worth pointing out that in seconds, she has literally taken his place and come between him and his wife, visually. Their private conversation goes on for a while, and it's nightfall by the time he sees her again. Michael is surprised that Catherine didn't speak to him at all. You might even read some hurt in his expression.
She didn't want to speak to me first?
No?
Maybe he assumed he and Catherine would be working together to help Allison, and it's strange not to get some feedback from her. Maybe he feels entitled to it. Maybe he just wants her to ask him how he's handling the death. Allison is weirdly positive now.
Of course I'm happy, Michael. Why wouldn't I be happy to have professional help for Jody?
She's completely flipped her opinion on having a nurse in the house, and is open to Michael returning to work. Just what did they talk about in there for all that time? This next scene is pivotal and establishes a lot of things. For one, this is a game with multiple story paths, and it's not really what you'd expect. Based on your responses to the question sections, some scenes have different versions that, in some way, reflect your answers. There are 3 versions of this scene, but they all play out similarly. Michael goes outside to have a drink and sees the light turn on upstairs. In the first version, he sees that it's Catherine's room and plays the part of a peeping Tom sneaking into the shadows to look at her naked. The other 2 are similar to each other, just with different amounts of nudity. Here he's already standing in place in view of her window, but turned away, and is caught off guard when it happens. In both, he continues to crane his neck as if trying to get a better view. Once inside, Allison tells him to say good night to Jody. He only opens her door, hesitant to enter, and plays at telling the empty room good night. We learn from Catherine's diary after this that she knew Michael was watching her. There are 2 interpretations to this. One is that she's referring to a gut feeling that she only suspected after the fact, or maybe was even hoping this was the case. I think it's more likely that she did this intentionally. She might not look intentional, but the situation just seems too handcrafted to me. The way she goes back to the window to undress before closing the curtains. In the following exploration section, there's a book in the bathroom about voyeurism. For the uninitiated, voyeurism is the act of watching someone secretly, usually for a sexual thrill, the peeping Tom. In art, voyeurism has been discussed at length for its power to change the meaning of a scene. For instance, a woman lying naked in bed is not inherently sexual. That's just her body, and she could be naked for any number of reasons. But if a man is watching her, knowing he's not supposed to, betraying his gratification, her body becomes pornography in the image. She's no longer an individual who can be naked for any reason. She's serving a purpose for someone else. She's an object of desire. Let's take that into consideration and look at the second version of this moment again. Assuming she's doing this knowingly completely flips the dynamic upside down, because now Michael is an unwilling voyeur. He isn't standing out here to get a peek at her, he's just trying to clear his head, and now she's appeared and brought his sexual desires to the forefront. He tells you afterwards that this is so distressing to him that he's considering replacing her already, and only doesn't because Allison likes her so much.
Thought it'd be weird having someone new in the house, but well, this is more than I bargained for. A lot more.
In a reversal of the voyeuristic image, the object of desire is the one defining her observer. No matter what, she had a feeling he was out there, and still chose to change in front of the window, so even in the first version, she's controlling the narrative. For now, her motivations are unclear, and only muddled by listening to the tapes she makes in addition to her diary.
It was very disconcerting. She reminds me so much of Colette. The way Colette was when I first met her. Damaged goods, the diamond covered with mud, all that. When I sat down next to Allison and took her hand in mine, I felt my neck and chest become flushed.
From the way she speaks about this Colette person, you can guess that she was some kind of lover, which is a concerning reaction to a patient. In just an hour of gameplay, we've already established a pretty complicated web of 3 characters. Michael cares for his wife and feels an attraction to Catherine that he's not entirely comfortable with. Allison is detached from reality and seems to respond much more warmly to Catherine. Catherine has felt some sort of interest in both of them, while also trying to keep her job at the forefront of her mind. The next morning, Catherine suggests Allison gets off her medication, and Michael pushes back, saying he would want a doctor's recommendation first.
By the time I bring her breakfast up, she's usually awake.
That's a mistake.
What is?
You're keeping her too comfortable and secure in her condition. I take it you didn't always make breakfast. We need to bring her out to a more active and self-rewarding existence.
Notably, Michael is unable to say that Jody died.
Allison hasn't cooked or baked a thing since the accident.
Catherine explains a new perspective on the situation.
Your wife is desperately holding on to the past. But by you doing things that you never did before, you're helping her to create an unreal world. A world of illusion, where she doesn't do the things she did before and is actually losing her grip on the past.
Catherine's strategy is to entertain her delusions to gain her trust and improve her lifestyle before proceeding. Michael understands this in theory, but when she asks him to bring Allison down for breakfast, he resists until she gives him an ultimatum. Do it, or she will. Begrudgingly, Michael gets up. Before he's left the room, Catherine switches her legs under the table. If it wasn't obvious before, it should be now, because she definitely knows he's still there and looking at her. When Michael tells Allison Catherine wants her downstairs to talk about Jody's breakfast, it's like she's come alive.
Jody's breakfast?
He's shocked. In one day, Catherine has done what he's failed to figure out in 6 months, and she's done it by acknowledging the delusion. This phenomenon underpins many of Michael's feelings going forward.
Michael appears to be a little confused. I must admit, so am I. I have bowel problems.
Not only was Colette a lover of Catherine's, she was also a polygamous partner, though unenthused about it. Catherine is into free love, and just because she loves a woman doesn't mean she should give up men. This seems to be the breaking point, and why Colette left her. Now, Catherine is in a house where she enjoys lots of private time with a vulnerable woman who resembles Colette in both appearance and temperament. There's another, even more disturbing reveal here. Her story about why she became a nurse, her mom's stroke, being inspired, it was all a lie. She says she uses it regularly to build trust with her patients, and nobody but her knows. Well, besides us, and just like the first meeting with Michael, And the flashing scene, it completely warps our perception of this moment, of Allison's smile.
I'm standing by an old barn watching some little birds build a nest. They're so busy. One of them has some golden stuff in his beak that he's weaving into the nest. Now he's flying up to the house. He's going to the window of my bedroom. Oh my gosh! He's taking the hair out of my brush that I left on the windowsill. Oh, how neat. They're using my hair to help build their home.
Something about this recording just unsettles me to my core. Reading Allison's diary is always a trip. In this entry, she's grateful that Michael finally listened and got a professional for Jody. Of course, Dr. Turner suggested it in the first place, Michael acted on it, and Allison didn't like it at first. Her world is like an amorphous mass of clay, constantly reshaped by whatever she's feeling in the moment.
That's better. Now,
I'll get right to the point. My husband and I are having problems in the bedroom.
Sexual problems.
Yeah, he thinks I'm too, kinky.
He has a problem with your bedroom fantasies.
Yeah, he's offered to do everything but that one thing, and it's driving me crazy.
And the one thing is?
He won't wear the rubber Nixon mask.
I'm sorry, Sally. What did you say?
He won't wear the Richard Milhouse Nixon mask. He thinks it's weird.
You want him to wear a Nixon mask when you make love?
Yeah.
And he thinks you're weird?
Yeah. Isn't that silly?
Sally?
Yes?
You need help.
I can't believe people say this game sucks.
We have to get on a schedule, so it's best we start right away.
Okay.
You can go upstairs and get dressed, Mr. Overton. We'll call you when we're ready.
Once again, Michael is pushed out of the room. There's a steamy scene of him shirtless, mowing the lawn. Catherine tells him Allison wants him to stop. He's obviously a little peeved, even more so when she explains that
Jody's trying to take a nap and you're keeping her awake.
This next scene has 3 variants. In all 3, Michael comes upstairs, still shirtless, and finds Catherine leaving Jody's room, having supposedly just given her a sponge bath. She tells him to go grocery shopping after his shower, and here's the split. In version 1, he flirts with her.
I think I need a shower. Maybe I should have a sponge bath.
In version 2, she flirts with him.
I'm not taking a shower until I finish cutting the lawn.
Maybe you prefer a sponge bath.
And in version 3, he tells her they don't need groceries, to which she leaves without a word.
We don't need anything. I went shopping yesterday.
From this point onwards, many scenes will come with variations, to the point that trying to account for them all would be nightmarish, so I'll talk about them when they're relevant. I made a chart. What tangles the plot up so much is that depending on which scene you get, characters can have wildly different traits. But many events are completely canonical. They don't change, and the variations need to agree with that. Michael could be a cheater with an interest in Catherine. She could be coming on to a married man, or they have a neutral interaction where she just asserts herself. In the next scene, Michael goes to Dr. Turner's office. First, he's forceful about seeing him, even though the receptionist tells him he's late for something. Then he peeks at a woman leaving the office.
What are you looking at?
He has a conversation with Turner about his concerns taking Allison off her medications. He says that despite his doubts, he didn't want to look critical of Catherine because he's not an expert either. He expresses some more problems with her authoritarian nature and finds out she's divorced. This scene carefully ties into every version of the previous one. It's better not to look at the variations as being alternate routes, but more so, the same characters with different traits emphasized. Michael is not some chaste person who won't even check out another woman. Catherine isn't so rigid either. She's polygamous, and she might just cross the line sometimes. She's also very commanding, and Michael takes issue with that. All 3 of these scenes fill in the characters and their relationships to each other, but none of them are invalid, just different potentials. This is the first exploration section in Dr. Turner's office, the only other location in the game. You can hear from Mrs. Greenstreet, the receptionist, who has her own concerns about the case.
Not that I think Mrs. Randolph is the Florence Nightingale of psychiatric care, but she is a professional psychotherapist, and Dr. Turner is certainly enthusiastic. Perhaps a little too enthusiastic. And maybe you should watch out for our nurse-turned-therapist. She's a bit too clever for her own good, if you ask me.
The office has some material that's pretty par for the course at this point. A TV that pits medical and sexual imagery against each other, a paper on memories repressed by PTSD, and a booklet on Munchausen by proxy. This is a crazy thing to throw in here. Munchausen syndrome is a condition where someone pretends to be sick or makes themselves sick to get the people around them to worry and stress and look after them. Munchausen's by proxy is a form of this where you aren't affecting yourself, you're making someone else sick, or keeping them that way so you can be the perfect caretaker. You might take them to the hospital and criticize the way the staff treat them compared to yourself. It's most often seen in mothers with their children, but the fact that this is here plants some interesting seeds. You might assume that this is about Catherine, who supports Allison's fantasy world, but what if it's actually Michael? It's just another thing to keep in mind as this web gets more and more tangled. When Michael gets home, Allison runs up, ecstatic, and tells him that not only did Jody sit up for the first time, Catherine suggested putting a TV in her room.
Your hair looks great. What'd you do to it?
Well, Catherine did it. You will do it, won't you, Michael? You will get her own television set?
That's what she wants.
Everywhere he turns, Catherine seems to be, and whatever Catherine says is best for Jody, he must capitulate to. Michael is on the porch, drinking that evening, when Allison asks him to go up to Jody's room to get her report cards and sketchbooks. There are two variations that are pretty similar to each other. The main difference is what gets him to agree. In one, he makes an excuse, and Allison tells him Catherine predicted he'd say that.
Catherine is amazing. I just didn't know that she understood you so well.
What do you mean?
Well, she said that you would say exactly what you did.
Here, he relents out of spite. In another, she just asks him again in a softer voice, and he gives in, making it a selfless act done for her.
Michael.
These highlight either his growing spite for Catherine or his love for his wife and willingness to go along with Catherine's plan. The third version is pretty distinct. He gets upset and says that Catherine is more than capable of doing it, only deciding to go up when she pressures him more.
Well, she doesn't know where they are, and you do. Would you please cooperate?
Okay. Okay!
This shines a light on a few things. For one, the growing tension between him and Allison. For two, his building resentment for Catherine taking control of his life. And three, his temper. This is not the first time we'll see him lash out, and the following scene is as enlightening as it is haunting. Michael inches his way up the steps. Every time he raises his feet, it's like he's pulling them out of molasses. His expression grows distant, and the thundering opera is encroached by sounds of a car engine. You realize why he didn't want to go in here. I suspect this is the first time he's been in Jody's room since the accident. I love the way the camera sways with his motion as he steps through the door. When he falls to his knees, there's this slack-jawed feeling of loss. Up to this point, our glimpses into Michael's weaknesses have been private. Now we get to see how deeply wounded he's been left by Jodie's death. Michael is constantly self-medicating with alcohol. It's clear that this is a coping mechanism of his, and he leans on it like a crutch because he lacks any other support. For 6 months, his wife has been practically catatonic. He's got no friends outside of work, and he's isolated in rural Oregon. Allison's condition is so dramatic that she's sucked up all the attention, including attention from him. Most of the interactive elements in the house will change over time, but there's one in his office that remains the entire game. On the bookshelf by the computer is a book titled Hugging the Shame Boy. The passage describes men who have been taught to suck up their emotions and get on with life, and the long-term damage it can cause. The book claims that this need to hide weakness is driven by shame, and its voice is personified as the Shame Boy. There's a pretty clear indication here that Michael struggles with his own shame. He feels guilty for a lot of things, including Allison's condition, and he lacks any of the tools to sort through these emotions on his own. I want to go back to the idea of Munchausen's by proxy and apply it to Allison. Both she and her husband are guilty of putting Jodie in a box. Michael hasn't even stepped foot in her room since the accident and has been living in a sort of limbo state where he can't approach his feelings about it. He tries to ignore it and tough it out. Allison, on the other hand, hasn't run from the emotions of Jodie, but the reality. Her box is like Schrodinger's cat. Jodie is alive, but unwell. Here's the thing, Jodie must remain unwell, because if she gets healthy, if she recovers, they have to go back to normal life, and some part of Allison's brain knows that that's impossible. They can't go back to the way things were. Jodie is put in the box. She could be alive or dead, and no one will know until the cold light of reality shines inside. In this way, I think Catherine is probably right. Allison's world has been frozen in time, and it needs to be thawed out. She cannot know. She must not know.
We were making dinner, and Allison cut her finger while chopping vegetables. It was a bad cut, but she just quietly stared with fascination at the blood dripping out of the wound. I figured she was having a flashback to the accident. Allison didn't say a word for a couple of hours. She sat at the kitchen table, staring into space.
This scene is the first time Michael's emotions have been unfrozen, and it is devastating. That night, he has what he calls the Scarecrow dream, a recurring nightmare where he's walking through a field outside his house towards a scarecrow. As he gets closer, he realizes that it's himself, crucified. The first time he had it was decades ago, when his best friend Mark was in a coma, and he had sex with Mark's girlfriend, right beside his hospital bed. This is Michael's shame manifest, his own visage executed for his crimes.
Well, Pat, it sounds like your husband needs a healthy dose of testosterone if he can't manage to have sex with somebody who looks like you.
Oh, he's having sex.
With whom?
With Mom.
Your husband is having sex with your mother?
She has trouble getting around, doing housework. She weighs 600 pounds.
600 pounds?
She's very big-boned. And she's pushing 68.
She's 68 years old? Your husband is a geriatric obesophile.
A what-ophile?
He likes porking fat old women.
What can I do to get him back?
Well, you better start feeding your face, because that's the only way you're going to get him back. So go out and get a bag of potato chips, Pat. I'm Dr. Betty.
This game's so awesome. Michael confronts Catherine about the television. He thinks it's just ridiculous, but Catherine asks him if it's any more ridiculous than when he says goodnight to Jody. He claims that he does that because it's comforting for Allison, and she argues that while she's getting results, he's only coddled her and to get out of her way. He ends up getting the TV from the attic anyway. I love that. I think everyone's been there when it just can't get any worse, and then you bump your head or something. You're so mad. Things keep ramping up with Catherine. Now, she wants to get a dog for Jody.
Animals are out of the question.
That's a crazy responsibility to add on to someone's life, but it's for Jody, so he goes along with it. Actually, he's going to see Dr. Turner again to complain.
Come on in.
Hello, Michael.
Michael is put in a 2-on-1 situation where, again, he feels disempowered. Turner tries to be a mediator, but ultimately takes Catherine's side, and she has this snide look during it. You have to wonder why she's there, and why she's dressed like that. She looks like she's on a date. Could they? No. Let's just push that to the side for now. In Turner's office, you find some subtle but telling pieces of information. Allison had a previous therapist who tried to show her pictures of the crash to jostle her memory, and she responded by violently clawing his face. Michael's file reveals that Jody died because she wasn't wearing a seatbelt while he was the one driving. You play this dumb game where you randomly guess a card to test your psychic abilities, and Michael brings the dog home. Allison is so overjoyed that she kisses him on the lips, and it's evident from his reaction that this is the first time she's done so in months. Catherine watches him with a smug grin and mimics the kiss. Once inside, we see a pretty ugly side of Michael.
Hey, no dogs on the bed in this house. Come on, you little mutt. Whoa. What's that? I rescued you from the pound, remember? You'll regret that.
This is the first time he shows his vengefulness. He is really upset at the idea that something he helped wouldn't show kindness to him in return. He expects it back. Anyway, we're looking for Allison now.
Allison!
Will you please be quiet? We're trying to develop some concentration.
Is Allison in there with you?
We're both thinking the same thing, right? Michael decides that he's ready to go back to work, and when Allison comes down, he asks her about the meditation upstairs. She's weirdly cagey about it.
No, I mean, what did you do?
We meditated.
Yeah, but what's meditation all about?
Like she's trying to avoid the question.
I'm curious about a lot of things.
Perhaps you should try a session with me.
I don't think Michael's quite ready for that yet.
I don't get it. What's so funny?
What are you talking about, Michael?
What are you two laughing at?
No one's laughing.
No one's laughing now, but both of you were laughing a second ago, and I want to know why.
Michael, stop it.
I don't need this shit, Allison.
This just adds to the strangeness, and Michael is understandably annoyed at them twisting reality right after he's lived it. The alternate take actually shows Michael refusing after playing along at being interested.
I'm curious about a lot of things.
Perhaps you should try a session with me.
I don't think so.
Well, why not? You just said you were interested.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did, Michael. I just heard you.
Now, he's the one who tries to deny what they just saw.
Look, I just don't want to, all right?
Why do you feel the need to get upset when someone offers you help?
I don't need your help.
Notice how he doesn't deny what she said, just that he even needs her help in the first place. In one version, Michael is frustrated by the slipping grip on his reality and the way they seem to be teaming up on him. In the other, he accidentally reveals his insecurity, his tendency to let things build up out of control because he refuses to ask for help. In his journal, he describes going to a group therapy session, but stopping just outside the meeting room. It was held at a grade school, and he found himself mesmerized by the children's drawings on the walls, the way a child lacks any self-consciousness, and that makes them artistic geniuses. He ruminates on the way he used to study Jodie's art, and how proud he felt that some of her genius was influenced by the way he was bringing her up through the world. I get the sense that Jodie was this comforting thing for him, that it was cathartic to raise someone who could so freely express themselves in ways he was too ashamed of. And now that it's gone, it's like that shame has compounded. The only commiseration he has is with himself in this journal. His sexual frustrations are mounting. He confesses that he fantasizes about Catherine and Allison constantly, to the point that he can't tell which one he's thinking of.
Allison, I've made a decision. I'm going back to work tomorrow.
Well, that's wonderful, Michael. You need to get out of the house. You're getting too serious.
Okay, fine. And tomorrow you're on your own.
Not exactly. I've got Catherine to take care of me.
Okay, it's not a game theory anymore, it's a game fact. This next TAT also uses another psychological test of questionable validity. It's similar in principle to the other ones, interpreting what's happening in pictures of a dog named Sparky. Actually, in the original test from the 1930s, they weren't called Sparky, it was actually called... Hey, it was a different time. Even at work, Michael can't stop calling the house to check on Allison.
Oh, it's only the third time I called. Okay, maybe the fourth. It doesn't matter.
It's up in the air as to whether it's out of care or paranoia.
How's Allison?
I guess she's doing fine now that the nurses arrived.
Another woman in the house, huh? Are you sure you can handle it?
I gotta get back to work, Charlotte.
Back at home, he discovers that Catherine has filled Jodie's room with drawings and toys as if she's still there. This is pretty disturbing to him, so he goes to Catherine's room and...
Catherine?
Hey, me too. He's drinking a lot now. This dog really pisses him off. He can't stand this thing.
Damn dog.
If you thought the TV was a little much, the dog was a little much. Now, Allison says they're throwing a birthday party for Jodie with guests.
I mean, it wouldn't be a party without guests now, would it?
I guess not.
You get the sense Michael could swallow the other things, but bringing people into the house to see Allison's delusion is really, really pushing it. At work, he tries to contact Turner again.
He's in Portland. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can you just let him know I called? I hope his brother feels better. Massive coronary.
God damn it!
Is everything okay, Michael?
Yeah, everything's just goddamn wonderful.
I just thought I'd ask if I could help.
I don't need your help.
In a self-defeating pattern, Michael still refuses help, even when it's offered to him. Desperate, he calls the house again and tells Catherine they need to talk one-on-one, but the only time she's available is...
during your meditation.
Michael's journal reveals his fraying connection to reality. He questions giving in to the same fantasies as Allison and telling bedtime stories to Jodie. He says he could hear a soft, childlike moan from her room and can only explain it with drunkenness. The thing is, the player can hear it too. Does that mean it's real? We've had this assumption that our role is the objective observer, but maybe our perspective is warped as well. It's time for meditation, baby.
Come in.
Catherine sits down on the bed in a revealing way, but their conversation is mostly business. When Michael tells her he's not comfortable with the direction things are going, she tells him that the way he was handling it would have led to one of them completely breaking down. He takes offense to this idea, and she acknowledges that he's also dealing with a lot of stress, but despite writing about it in private, he gets upset when it's brought up.
But you're treating the symptoms and not the problems. We cannot go on pretending that Jodie's still alive forever.
You need to be patient.
You don't tell me what I need to be. I'm just about out of fucking patience here. So where the hell are we going with all this?
We end by reliving the tragedy.
And what is that supposed to mean?
One night, the accident must happen again. I mean, we describe it to her, make her remember, but not until we've laid a foundation of acceptance.
And you think this will work?
Yes, I do.
You're out of your fucking mind.
There's this ambiguous exchange where he sarcastically suggests meditation, and she takes him up on the offer. And you wonder if that was secretly what he wanted. Another version has him getting less upset and bringing the conversation back to Allison. Here, Catherine's the one to bring up meditation, which makes her intent pretty clear, if you can't tell where this is going. Jodie's room has a wheelchair now, which he notes is crazy. I agree, those things are expensive.
I think I'll go make something special for dinner, because if he's anything like me, Mike will be really hungry after a session with Catherine.
Henry, my husband. He's always spying on me. He thinks I'm having an affair with my boss. I have a secret life.
What kind of secret life? Are you doing drugs, Karen?
Oh, no. I'm a prostitute.
Oh my God!
Henry?
Oh my God!
Is there somebody else on the line?
Henry, are you on the phone?
Oh my God!
Henry, where are you?
I'm in the basement. Oh my God!
Henry, I can't believe you're listening in on my phone calls.
I can't believe I'm listening to your phone calls. I can't believe I'm married to a hooker. Oh my God!
Wow, he really hit the...
Oh my God! I can't believe this! Yo, I can't believe this!
I know you haven't said anything, and perhaps you want to keep it private, but did you and Allison decide to adopt another child?
Huh?
Why do you ask?
See, we were driving by the other day, and we saw Allison out walking a child in a wheelchair.
What?
Well, we would have stopped, but there was a nurse with her, and, well, I guess the new one's, handicapped. But she seemed like a cute little girl. Well, obviously, it's none of my business. I just wanted to wish you luck, after all that you've been through. Bye.
At home, Michael goes up to Catherine's room.
Hey, you look like you've had a bad day. Come sit down on the bed. Let's get you relaxed.
Slowly, she starts to massage his shoulders.
What are you afraid of?
I don't know. You, I guess.
His expression is full of conflict.
Why don't you take your shirt off?
Her hands stroke his body. They get lower and lower until she unfastens his belt. His face is a whirl of mixed emotions. Catherine removes his underwear and tells him to lie back, completely supine and at her mercy. If you've been paying attention, sex permeates the game. It is crammed into every corner. I'm not kidding when I say that TLC is more sexual than actual porn games. Everything seems intent on keeping your mind on it. The whole atmosphere is contorted by Michael and Catherine's suppressed lust for each other. There is a mountain of sexual frustration piling up in the background, both within the characters and the viewer. I've glossed over most of it because there's just so much, but You have been subjected to constant teasings, discussions of sex, sexual imagery, fantasies, infidelity, threesomes. God, I'm feeling like Mike, because I want to ball out, and I mean in her. Okay. There's some explicit nudity, but it cuts away before things get really graphic.
Welcome back.
What happened?
I'll be going down to help Allison.
Allison. Oh, Allison. I should have never done this. I should have never came in here. Jesus. Poor Allison.
This scene is as erotic as it is uncomfortable. Up to now, Catherine has been on roughly the same level as Michael. Her diary entries reveal that she's been struggling with temptation, but every time she has a chance, she mentions how she's doing everything for Allison's sake. Not only is it obviously fucked up for a nurse to have sex with a patient's husband, the way Michael consents to it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. She explains this away as being the only way to keep him from firing her, and the only way to interpret that is that she's using his sexual frustration and his unprocessed traumas to separate him from his wife, loosen his grip on reality, and ultimately control him.
He's getting frustrated to the point where he might actually ask me to leave. And I can't let that happen. This case is far too important. I have an opportunity here to really do something for my patient, and I'm not going to let anything ruin my plans.
She has the knowledge to exploit his mental weaknesses. When he speaks to the player afterwards, listen to how he describes it.
I can't explain it. She just... Shit. I want to say she seduced me, but I'd be lying. I wanted her.
Michael is unabashedly the victim here, but he can't bring himself to believe it. Instead, he pins it on himself. The shame is too great. He needs to shove it away, back into the box. Catherine knows this, and when he goes to confront her the next day, she moves the responsibility off of herself.
I think it'd be best if you just leave. I'll pay you for 2 more weeks. I think that's more than fair.
Does Allison know about this?
Allison is in no condition to make such decisions.
And you are.
What is that supposed to mean?
You're upset about what you did last night. And you're acting with extreme selfishness. You'd like to forget about it, so you just want me to leave. Disappear as though nothing happened.
I want you out of here.
And what are you planning on telling Allison? That you asked me to leave because we had sex?
Of course not.
Why not? It's the truth.
So I wouldn't do that to her. That would kill her.
What do you care about her?
How can you say that? She means everything to me.
If you cared anything about her at all, you wouldn't even think about having me leave. I'm making tremendous progress, and you want me to leave simply because you can't control your lust for me.
It's not true.
Isn't it?
This sex is the final piece she needs to dominate him. The seed that was planted all the way back in that voyeurism scene has come to fruition. The object of desire reshapes her voyeur. Michael is losing his sense of self, his values, his sanity, and only sliding deeper into her web.
Allison, just what do you do in your meditation?
The same thing as you, Michael.
Tell me about it.
What do you mean?
I mean, describe what you do.
Why should I describe something that you already know about?
I thought maybe we'd compare notes.
If you want to know, just describe to me what you do, and I'll tell you if I do anything different.
Dude, he is gonna lose his goddamn mind.
Damn dog, I swear to God I'm gonna kill it one of these days.
He hates that dog, Jesus.
Oh, that's right, I forgot. We need to get pizza for an appetizer. The house special at the Nimble Hippo in Ashland.
It's 20 miles away.
We'll warm it up when you get back.
I'm not driving into Ashland tonight.
It's been a long time since Jody's had a slice of pizza.
She's right, Michael. Jody asked for the pizza.
All right. Okay, I know, I said it before, but I'll never let that happen again. I mean it. Never again. She's... I don't know what I'm gonna do. Now I gotta go get a fucking pizza.
Catherine's tape recorder has her practicing,
Daddy. Daddy. Daddy.
A little weird given the circumstances, but okay. That night, Allison comes on to Michael. After 6 months, they finally have sex.
Did you like it?
It was fantastic.
It was Catherine.
What?
She's been encouraging me to take control of things.
Catherine tells them that Jody is crying for Michael, so obviously she wants to talk to him. And when he gets to the room...
Daddy?
Oh, don't tell me.
Daddy, I'm scared.
Don't do this.
Don't leave me.
Stop it.
Don't send me away, Daddy.
I won't.
Promise me you'll never send me away. Say it, Daddy.
I promise I'll never send you away.
Dude.
You smell good. Like a woman.
This is a contender for the most shocking scene in the game. If not for the very next scene where Allison tells him to go to the store to buy Catherine some organic herbal shampoo.
Catherine needs some organic herbal shampoo. I couldn't find it anywhere else.
Jesus.
Michael.
Michael is so fucked at this point. This is the second time he confronts her about her antics, and she tells him that he's just being a man and wants everything on his terms, that he doesn't really want his wife to get better. He pushes back, but she just has to pull the sheets off. He still has no luck getting in touch with Dr. Turner.
Need some help, sir?
Oh, that's definitely a developer. He's even wearing an 11th Hour shirt. There's a fairly large bombshell dropped in Catherine's journal where she reveals that she had a sexual relationship with Dr. Turner. Not only that, she cheated on her husband with him, and that's why she's divorced. It was all a calculated move because, in her mind, being betrayed was an easier explanation to swallow than the truth, that she had never really loved him.
I wish that dog would stop barking.
Allison? What's wrong? Allison, what's wrong?
Michael! You didn't do it, did you?
Do what?
Because if you did such a thing...
What did I do? What is she talking about?
Jody's dog.
What about the dog?
She's dead.
Oh, shit.
She was poisoned! Rat poison!
Come on, honey. Let's go inside, okay?
Michael checks the basement and finds a box of rat poison. Upstairs, he notices that the clay floor leaves behind a trail of footprints and goes to investigate Catherine's room.
Returning to the scene of all your crimes?
No, it's more like the scene of your crime.
Really?
You
Kill the dog.
Is that what you're doing, planting rat poison in my closet? Is that what you have behind your back?
No. You went down in the basement and you got the poison yourself. You see, they're covered in red clay from the basement floor. This is proof you killed the dog. I'm going down right now and I'm showing these to Allison.
Show her what? A pair of shoes you took out of my closet and pressed into the basement floor?
No. I didn't do anything like that.
Of course you did. And honestly, it's such a pathetic attempt to blame me for something that you did.
I didn't kill that dog. You did! You did! And Allison's gonna know the truth.
Allison knows very well that you're the one that hated the dog. She won't believe your story, and I know she'll believe mine. Michael, you look very silly standing there holding a pair of my shoes.
I want you out of here!
When Michael was 10 years old, his father gave him a hunting rifle for his birthday. He went out into the woods and saw a crow land on the tree above him. It started to caw over and over again, grinding on his nerves until, out of anger, he decided to shoot. It fell to the ground, but it wasn't dead. He'd only opened a hole in its wing, and it laid there, writhing. He decided to put it out of its misery, and fired again. But he only blew off its leg. It screeched in even greater agony, and darkness clouded his vision. How dare it accuse me? How dare it make me feel guilty? I hadn't meant to hurt it. I was filled with searing, hateful violence. I started beating him with the butt of the rifle. I beat him into a pulp in a wild, vicious tantrum. The .22 cracked and broke. I left them there, the gun and the crow, and I ran crying home. When I told Dad what had happened, he didn't say a word. He just shook his head. Catherine has a recurring dream about being the sole passenger on a train. She is approached by the conductor, who offers her a drink. She accepts and reaches for her wallet to pay for it, but he shakes his head and says, No, Bittersweet. You already bought the farm. All at once, I'm struck with the clear and certain knowledge that 20 years earlier, I killed a woman with blonde hair. I begin to perspire. Sweat beads across my forehead and trickles down to my cheeks. Overcome with horror and remorse, I suddenly understand, as I ought to have understood 20 years earlier, that I am evil, a monster. I rise from my seat and begin moving to the back of the train, staggering under the weight of my own guilt. The conductor is waiting for me when I arrive. I stumble forward, grab the handrail, and pause just long enough to look back at the conductor. He smiles and nods as I throw myself over. I can see them. My father is sitting in his chair with Jody on his lap. I am not imagining this. They are sitting right in front of me. Michael is unraveling. They are staring at me. Their eyes are accusing me. I'm sorry, I say aloud. They do not disappear.
Why don't you just tell Allison that you killed the dog? Tell her you're sorry, you made a mistake. You'll get another dog. It would mean a great deal to her.
I didn't kill the dog. You did.
The dog is dead. And Allison is dangerously upset. You've got to do something about it.
You enjoy making people suffer, don't you?
Quite the contrary. I like to help. That's why I became a nurse.
God, I hate you.
You hate yourself.
Hey, there's an idea. Let's talk about you for a change.
My life is none of your concern.
Why don't we start with your ex-husband? Why'd he leave you?
Don't push me, Michael. I'm better at this game than you are.
What are you afraid of?
I might ask the same of you, but I already know the answer. Come on, Michael, admit it. You like to kill.
What?
First your daughter,
Then her dog. You think I don't know why you want Allison to remain half catatonic?
What is that supposed to mean?
Michael, we both know there's no such thing as an accident. Tell me about the accident. Tell me the details.
God, I hate you.
You hate yourself. You think I don't know why you want Allison to remain half catatonic?
Go to hell.
You were driving the car. You were going too fast.
No.
Well, the police report says you were. You couldn't negotiate the turn, but you should have. You've driven that road so many times before.
It was raining.
And Jody didn't have on her seatbelt because you didn't insist. But you wore one. You saved yourself by wearing it.
That's not true.
Of course it's true.
I don't remember.
Well, Allison remembers. You think she's forgotten, but she remembers everything. She told Jody to put it on, but Jody started to cry. And you said that it would be all right.
Get away from me. Get out of my house.
Why were you driving so fast?
I wasn't.
You think I don't know why you want Allison to remain half catatonic?
You're insane.
Just a little seatbelt and her head wouldn't have smashed against that windshield.
Stop it, please stop it.
Not only did you lose your daughter, but your wife is lost in some world where this didn't even happen.
You're crazy.
You're crazy. You don't want to help your wife because you're sicker than she is.
No.
Those little impulses can be so hard to control.
And you're evil. You're crazy.
But then there's the guilt. You carry it around with you all the time. While you eat, while you sleep, while you make love.
Stop it, please stop.
If only Jody were still alive. If only her head hadn't smashed into that windshield.
It was an accident.
Face the truth, Michael. It's your fault.
No!
It had to be done. I told him what he had to hear. It was his fault. His baby's head smashed against the windshield. His wife's illness. All of it. His fault. His. Exactly as I'd stood at the mirror and told myself, ruthlessly. Because Michael and I are cut from the same cloth. Someday, he may even understand how much I did for him. Understand that it wouldn't have ended without it. That the burning doesn't stop until you recognize your own guilt, stumble beneath its weight, until you resign yourself never again to suffer the consequences of a single careless moment. Afterwards, I went up to my bedroom and looked at myself in that same mirror, and I wept. Allison doesn't want to speak to Michael until he does, as Catherine says, and apologizes to Jody for killing the dog. When he goes upstairs, he sees...
Michael, are you all right?
You're crazy. You're out of your mind. You're evil. You should be locked up.
You're overstressed, Mr. Overton. Perhaps you could use some counseling.
She's right, Michael. You're a mess.
She's not right. She's vicious and cruel, and you gotta stop listening to her.
Maybe you should go see Dr. Turner.
That's a very good idea.
Well, that is a good idea. I think I will go see Dr. Turner. That's exactly what I'm gonna do right now.
Michael, it's in the middle of the night.
Green Street! It's just me.
He's been waiting there all night. Michael strong-arms Mrs. Greenstreet into calling the clinic that referred Catherine. He's at his breaking point, he's been thoroughly traumatized, and he's getting her out of the house.
I know she's very qualified. You don't know what kind of a person she is. What'd she do? Well, she killed my dog, for one thing, and she blamed it on me. Yes, she did. And she sent me out for pizza and organic herbal shampoo. She's a crazy woman.
Michael drives home elated. The clinic has already called to bring Catherine home, and Allison is distraught, so he tries to comfort her and sends her away to do some knitting. Time to gloat over his victory.
No more sessions. I want you to leave this house like you're supposed to.
Oh, I'm leaving. But not until my job's done.
Oh, it's done. It's over. It's bye-bye time.
I'm not leaving Allison in this half catatonic, childlike state. I'm not going to leave her with a madman and just forget about her. It's time for her to face the truth.
You stay away from her.
I had planned on doing it my way, slowly and carefully. But you ruined that. Somehow I knew you would. Now you forced me to do it shockingly and abruptly.
What?
What are you talking about?
She has to be made to recall that when you crashed the car, Jody's head smashed into the windshield and she died instantly.
Oh, no.
Allison's transformed Jody into the doll. She even slept with it last night.
Don't do this. It won't work.
Yes, it will. Go and look.
Oh, my God.
Oh, this is not going to go well.
I found that sledgehammer and red paint in the basement. It's quite realistic, don't you think? Allison?
Don't. It's too much for her.
You should have thought about that before you interfered with my work. Allison!
No!
Are you calling me, Catherine? I have something I want to show you. Do you want me to come up?
Oh, no.
Wait there, I'll be right down.
I won't let you do this.
Then you do it. You show her what you
God.
did.
No, please!
Allison, it's time to face the truth.
Leave her alone!
This is what really happened that night in the car.
Oh, my God.
You've been living with a lie too long, and Michael has...
Oh, shoot!
So, you're leaving. I'll get your bags.
Michael buries Catherine's body, talking to himself the whole time like he's putting her in a taxi.
Now don't let him overcharge you. Let me get the door.
Allison returns to her detached state and agrees that Jody never liked Catherine.
I had a little talk with Jody about that. I thought she'd be upset about Catherine leaving. But she wasn't. As a matter of fact, she said the nurse often frightened her.
I don't doubt it.
That night, Michael joins her in bed. She's a far cry from the lively, warm person she was before. Now, she turns away from him. Dr. Turner comes to visit a few days later, and Michael gives him a tour around the house. While they're in the kitchen, he starts to ask about Catherine, and Michael gives him an earful.
You know, she killed that dog she forced me to get. She poisoned it, tried to blame it on me. She's trying to turn Allison against me. Incredible. Not so incredible once you get to know her. She was a vicious, hateful, arrogant person. She even tried to get me to be unfaithful to Allison. She wanted me to do it so she could use it against me later.
Conveniently, he can't bring himself to say he had sex with her, only that she tried to seduce him. Michael gets uncomfortable when Turner asks him about how Catherine left, and something strange starts to happen. You can hear the threads in his mind crisscrossing.
No, I didn't tell him anything. I just put her in the car with her bags. You don't know what she tried to do. What she might have done if I hadn't stopped her.
What did she try to do?
She tried to kill Jody. Tried to blame it on me in front of Allison. It was my fault. Jody would cry whenever Allison would make her wear the seatbelt. What could I do? Allison would say, "Drive slower, Michael. Drive slower." I did drive slow. Sometimes you're not thinking about it and you go a little faster. This is Randolph. She wanted me to suffer. Doll in her arms and...
What did you do?
So I stopped her.
How?
I hit her. Had to. Afterward, when it was over, it was time to go, she understood. Put her bags in first.
Where did you put her bags?
Put the hammer in too.
In the cab?
It's right out there, parked beside the doll grave. It was hard for me to pick up that doll. And to throw a tablecloth over it. She dressed it in Jody's clothes. You understand why I had to use a tablecloth?
Of course.
Despite all his attempts to return to a normal life, he realizes that this is it. He can't escape it anymore.
Mrs. Randolph is still on your land, isn't she?
No. No. She left in a cab. I put the suitcases in myself.
But if she were still here, you'd want her to be taken away, wouldn't you?
You're damn right I would.
Well, then I think we should check it out. Just to be on the safe side. I must make a few important telephone calls.
And just like a dream, the paramedics arrive and Michael is arrested without resistance. Allison is told that he'll be going away for a while and she'll be taken to a hospital with Jody. As he's brought outside, he breaks free for a moment and drops to his knees.
Can you hear that? I haven't heard that since I was a little boy. Shh. It's there. It's NieR's heartbeat. It's there after all this time. It was always a secret of mine that I wanted to share with Jody. Of all the things that I wanted to tell her and I never did. That's the one I regret the most.
At last, he breaks down, crying for the first time, like a dam has been broken in his heart. At last, he starts to open the box. And that's tender, loving care. Okay, you know it's not. There are technically 8 different permutations to the ending sequence, but only 5 real endings. As with the variable scenes, I don't think it's correct to call the one we just saw the true ending, more so that each one represents different threads manifested. After killing Catherine, Michael and Allison might just get into bed. He kisses her and she turns away while he's left to process the fact that they're returning to the previous caretaker relationship. There's a mixed feeling to this one, a sense of regret that isn't present in the extended version where he justifies his actions. There's another variant where, as they lay together, you hear a child's voice.
She's calling for you.
I know, I heard her. Okay, honey, Daddy's coming.
I doubt that they adopted a new kid, so I can only conclude that here, Michael has fully lost his mind and is now sharing in Allison's delusion. The ghostly moans he heard in Jody's room earlier in the game were actually him hallucinating. In a way, this is the opposite of the other bed ending, because now the both of them can live as if nothing ever happened. The most unsettling to me is the one where Allison comes upstairs and finds the doll. Catherine starts telling her that it's dead, triggering a breakdown from her as Michael slides to the floor in disbelief.
Stop this!
From here, Michael might call the paramedics and sit down with Allison to tell her that she never really liked Catherine. But another path shows Allison and Michael in Jody's room as they look down at the bed, talking about how wonderful she is, only to reveal that it's Catherine, who slowly turns to look at the camera. This one implies to me that Catherine is a sort of vegetable now, being kept in a childlike state by Allison. It's also unclear how Michael feels about it. He just looks on. What I find so eerie isn't just how twisted it is, but also the ironic way it plays on the scene of Catherine mimicking Jody. During their struggle, Catherine can be the one to kill Michael, after which there's a scene similar to the one in which Catherine dies, but now with the roles reversed.
I caught him trying to hurt Jody with a hammer. I tried to stop him, but he grabbed me by the throat and he tried to strangle me. I had to send him away. I'm afraid I have to call the police now and tell them what Michael did. Do you remember what he did?
He hit Jody with a hammer. And he tried to strangle you.
That's right.
You might be inclined to believe that Catherine is doing something evil and wrong here, controlling Allison and exploiting her delusion, but you'd also have to say the same of Michael.
Despite whatever she did or said, Jody never really liked her.
I know.
In the inverse version of this conversation, he is also lying to her, telling her that she was more miserable with Catherine around and that Jody was afraid of her when that was not the case. Like it or not, Catherine breathed new life into her, and that's why I like the fact that some of this conversation exists in nearly every ending.
Maybe we can take her for a walk in her wheelchair.
Can we? That would be so much fun.
Oh, we're gonna have a lot of fun from now on.
Cool. In total, Tender Loving Care leaves us with many different interpretations of its characters, none of them truly correct. Michael is a broken man trying to appear whole, who's let shame control him his entire life. From his perspective, Catherine has come into his home and only made things worse. She's using methods that concern him, she's threatening his role as master of the house, and she's subjecting him to powerful temptations. Depending on the scenes you get, Michael's primary motivators are either his love for his wife, or the guilt he feels for lusting after Catherine. Even the love for his wife has questions attached to it. What's the deal with that Munchausen's by proxy thing? If you relate it to him and follow Catherine's interpretation, Michael's concern is actually a desire for his wife to be deluded again, and he needs her to live in a fantasy because, as always, he feels guilty for the accident. He is the scarecrow, crucified for his sins, but it must be that way. He must scare off the crows, or else they'll drape him in even heavier shames. Catherine is the ultimate gatekeeping, gaslighting girl boss. Reading enough of her diary will reveal that she is not a moral person in any sense of the word. She's willing to isolate and compromise Michael's values to get blackmail over him. Why? What's her motive? There's a few outlooks. For one, I think on some level, Catherine really does care about treating Allison. When she has no one to talk to, when it's just her and her thoughts, she will still firmly claim that she's doing everything for Allison.
He was gonna fire me, I could tell. And if his wife is ever gonna get better, it'll only happen if I stay. I'm her only hope, and he was on the verge of taking that hope away.
Michael says she likes to hurt people, but from her perspective, all her actions are for the greater good. She cheated on her husband to protect his feelings. She lies about serious issues to gain her patient's trust, and she seduces Michael to keep him from firing her, to continue Allison's treatment. But why is she willing to go so far for her? On one hand, it's easy to chalk it up to ego. Catherine has a chip on her shoulder. She comes from a male-dominated field and frequently talks about how they're all the same. They think of themselves as geniuses and look down on her.
I've worked for those so-called doctors for 8 years. He's just like the rest of them. An overpaid drug prescriber thinks he's the greatest thing since Sigmund Freud.
I want you out of here.
This is a chance for her to prove them wrong and establish her dominance. I find this one excerpt so fascinating when she says she and Michael are cut from the same cloth. It implies that in her past, there was some original sin, something terrible that she did, some failure. And that's where she and Michael split. He chooses to run from it, while she resolves to never let it happen again. Except, there's something else going on here, isn't there? We saw it earlier, much to my apog, but there's some serious hints that her relationship to Allison is sexual. Multiple times over, it's mentioned that Catherine has unorthodox treatment methods, and being in such a private setting allows her to finally use them without getting in trouble. She's shocked by Allison's resemblance to her old lover Colette, and even recalls that the two of them left on bad terms because of Catherine's polygamy. There's an interpretation here that, for Catherine, fixing Allison would be like getting Colette back, and she needs that because she's the one that got away. Allison is the biggest victim of all this. It's kinda natural. Her state doesn't allow her to be very active in the plot, and I find the glimpses into her head disturbing. Allison's journal entries are rambly, bordering on incoherent streams of consciousness. It's a real trip to watch something happen and then read her interpretation of it. She thinks Michael was the one to suggest getting the dog, for instance. She constantly invents memories and versions of events that conform to what she needs to see, even after witnessing reality. Who do you think is the most powerful character in the story? Is it Catherine? Michael? Turner? The answer is none of them. The most powerful character in the story is you, the player, the observer. In a 2012 interview by James Woodcock of Pixel Refresh, TLC's director, David Wheeler, said that they were inspired by the Feelies from Brave New World. Feelies were movies that would change based on the audience's emotional reaction to what was happening. Tender Loving Care tries to recreate this by assigning various character traits to the questions you answer and aggregating them to make a psychological profile of the player. The scenes you get are based on your profile. It's a lot less direct than what most other choose-your-own-adventure type stories present, and I think it works, honestly. In my own playthrough, I never felt like anyone was acting out of character based on what I knew about them. And that's another point, actually. At first, you might think the exploration scenes are pacing killers, breaking up the flow of the story every time something important happens. But if you pay attention and keep notes, like I did, they add a tremendous amount to the game. Practically half the story and character development happens in private, in journals and books on the shelf. Hints are sprinkled into long papers that suggest things about what's going on in these people's minds. They reflect their inner worlds. Based on the scant interactions you have with the characters, I believe that the player represents the concept of being watched. They call you the viewer and treat you like an imaginary friend, or the second person you make up to bounce ideas off when you're alone. You could be there, watching with your own set of knowledge, and by your very presence, you change the meaning of the scene. The segment that captures this is right after the dog dies. Who killed it? You might be inclined to say Catherine. She has a motive, to turn Allison against Michael so she can isolate and control him, as well as further crush his psyche. But there's enough evidence pointing at Michael to at least consider him. I mean, he did hate that dog, he's frequently drunk, and he's already hearing things by that point in the story. There's also the time he killed the crow and the obvious parallels between it and the dog's barking. Based off of the characters' journals, there are lots of things that happen that we just don't see in cutscene form. Meanwhile, Allison thinks the whole thing was an accident, is what I wrote initially. The neat thing about Tender Loving Care is that almost everything about the game can be dug up in the Steam folder, including cutscenes, audio, code, and images. This includes every screen in the game and every inspectable item. Turns out, during my playthrough, I only missed a single screen. After the dog's death, for the first and only time, the fireplace in the master bedroom can be investigated. Buried beneath the wood is a burned piece of paper, the same kind as in Allison's diary, and the handwriting matches. The page is incomplete, and much of it is burnt, but it reads approximately, "Is in the basement. Mix in with food. It is odorless and tasteless. Just a couple. Make sure that." It was Allison. Allison killed the dog. Here's what I think. They got the dog as part of Jodie's treatment to make her feel better, bring life into the house, help her recover. And at some point, that part of Allison's brain told her that she was getting too close to reality. She had to kill it, or else Jodie might actually get better. She had to force a tragedy, create a wound, and then the shifting sands of her mind swept it away. It was just an accident. Maybe Michael was just careless.
Jodie understands that it was just an accident. It happens all the time. Jodie knows that it wasn't Michael's fault, and she's feeling very happy.
When Catherine insists she didn't do it, she means it. She has good reason to believe it was Michael, too. When he finds the clay on her shoes, did he plant that there? Like she accused him of doing? Has he really lost his mind? This paper is only here for a single section, and then it's gone. A story-shattering clue that changes the entire climax of the game, and I just missed it. When the game asks me who I think killed the dog, I didn't even hesitate to say Catherine. And in some way, my own bias and my own incomplete perspective shaped the course of the story. An incomplete perspective, just like the characters. 1 house, 7 rooms, 4 completely different worlds. Tender Loving Care is an exceptionally dense game, and a very difficult one to write about. Jesus, do you know how long the script took? There's a lot going on, and I think the way that it plays with the traditional role of the player in a story is more groundbreaking and experimental than some games released today. TLC, at its core, is about the power and horror of being perceived. Let's bring back that imagery from earlier about Schrodinger's cat. Michael's cat is his shame, for his lust, for his part in the accident, for everything he's done. He was never given the emotional tools to deal with any of these things, and so opening the box risks acknowledging the stench of a lifetime of baggage. Allison's cat is Jodie. The death was so traumatic that she had to shove her daughter's memory into a box and live in a fantasy. Opening the box means living in a world without her laughter, her sunshine. Catherine's cat is Tigger.
It's okay, Tigger.
Catherine's cat, I believe, is the same as Michael. She knows deep down that she's hurt people, she's made mistakes, so she jams those thoughts into a box and seals it with cold, cutting rationale, that she did it for their own sake. She's just like Michael, a slave to her shame, and she's just like Allison, living in a delusion. Her dreams know better, though. They tell her that if she opens the box, she'll break even harder than Michael. For most of my life, even today, to an extent, I suffered from a crippling death anxiety. During bad periods, I'd experience constant, daily panic attacks. At its worst, I was having as many as 3 a day for months straight, which is when I decided to go to therapy. For me, every waking moment was defined by the fact that I was going to die one day. I'd feel the breeze on my skin and only thought about how one day I wouldn't be able to. Most days, I felt like I was already dead. After many months in therapy, I came to the understanding that I wasn't afraid of death at all. I was afraid of being alone. I always had been, from the earliest days of my childhood, friendless from a split home, and death was the ultimate loneliness. Those were the feelings that I put into the box, too afraid to look at them. But I didn't feel that way when I held my girlfriend. After a long time and a lot of help, I finally knew why. In a fury, I wrote down my thoughts and what I saw for the first time when I was sucked into panic. I began to picture that same scene of being dead, in the dark and void, but with her, my best friends, my family, with me, and all the fear was gone. Because if I was being perceived, I was being defined, and I really existed. I could open the box and look inside, and even if the cat was dead, it was more honorable to give it the dignity of existing. Thank you to my patrons who keep this channel free. $10 a month patrons get exclusive commentary tracks to these videos. And please, I tell you, open the box. At least, while it's still your choice to make.
Here comes a daredevil!